my name is Allie Schmidt. This is my dad, Dan. He owns Caitlin's Glass.
Thanks, Allie. Things like doors and windows go into making a house. But when it's your home, you expect more, like the great service and selection you'll get from Caitlin's Glass. Vinyl replacement windows from Caitlin's come with a lifetime warranty, including accidental glass breakage replacement. Also ask for custom shower doors and many other products and services. Call 962-1636. Locally owned with local employees for nearly 30 years.
Caitlin's Glass, the clear choice.
Hey, do you want to catch every episode live as it's being recorded? Log on to patreon.com/BeTempered for exclusive footage behind the scenes, photos, and a live recording as it takes place. Go to patreon.com/BeTempered.
Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, where we explore the art of finding balance in a chaotic world.
Join us as we delve into insightful conversations, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you navigate life's ups and downs with grace and resilience.
We're your hosts, Dan Schmidt and
Ben Spahr.
Let's embark on a journey to live our best lives.
This is BeTempered.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the BeTempered podcast, episode number
68.
68.
68. Doesn't sound as good.
No, not as the 6'7". You probably don't even know that. You don't have kids, so you don't. Do you know what that 6'7"? Have you heard that?
No, I never
that might
heard
not even
that.
be a thing down in Miami.
It's probably not.
It's probably
All the unks down there.
We learned some new language last week.
We did,
That these
right?
young kids are.
Yeah.
So we're super mature. Hey, today we have another former rite of passage teammate, Alan Bair, all the way up from Miami, Florida, to share his story. And Alan was one of the guys on the rite of passage who shared some of his story with me as we were trekking through the mountains. And I was blown away by your story, by what you shared with me. And I told you on the way up here that, you know, some of the things you've told me, I've told numerous people. And so I'm excited for you to share your journey with us here today. So welcome to the BeTempered podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I'm really grateful to be here, honestly. This is it's really an honor to be doing this and to be sharing experiences like this with other people. So
well, I know your story is going to be super impactful for someone out there because of the things that you've been through throughout your life. So how we like to start every episode is from the beginning. So talk about childhood for you growing up.
Okay, yeah. I just remember being really afraid as a child, just a lot of fear. And, it just started at a really early age. I remember like little things from my childhood. I remember being really small and being in kindergarten. And when I started first grade, I remember being outside the fence of the schoolyard and, just crying to my mother, like, please don't make me go in there. I was like deathly afraid. And, I just remember being, a self-conscious child as well. I always felt like I was bigger, a little fluffier, a little heavier than everyone else. I was, I batted cleanup and I was always the slowest guy on the team or, the biggest guy playing kickball or whatever. And, I remember being embarrassed to get in the pool or take my shirt off. We were playing shirts versus skins in basketball or something like that. Just always really afraid. I think I was really afraid of, where I came from too. Just really ashamed of my family and the home I grew up in, and the way that I felt about. I think the way it was inside of that home. Again, I don't know if any of that is really natural. Like looking back now, I think, people grow up in much worse situations, but for some reason I just had this fear, this alone sort of feeling, this, if they figure out who I really am, then they'll figure me out or something. And it just like from a very early age, I was like, I got to be a little bit different than that. And, it was hard. I didn't realize, I realize it now, like, it's like probably everybody grows up like that. And then they start like, developing all these masks and all these like personas that they, attach to themselves to prove that they're not this fearful person. And, I spent a lot of my life doing that and, learning the hard way and finally reaching adulthood. I remember when I was a child, I grew up in a very dysfunctional household. You know, I would say it's like a lower middle class, or like I said, an upper lower class sort of household. But you know, there was alcoholism. There was just a darkness, like a feeling, you know, of poverty. You know, I don't know if so much financially, but just of spirit and everything. You know, and my sister was 8.5 years older than me, or she still is. You know, I think, you know, so when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, she was already in high school. She was skipping school. She was drinking, smoking pot, and you know, my parents had a really hard time with her. You know, my father actually quit drinking when I was right before I was born. You know, so he was still relatively new in sobriety. I don't know. I mean, looking back now, I think like, man, I haven't been like that, you know, in my sobriety, which I'll get to later. But you know, he had a lot of anger, a lot of rage, and you know, I think he came from a household where, you know, you got disciplined. You know, so I remember from an early age, you know, seeing my sister get beaten, and you know, he would come at both of us with a belt. You know, that was like sort of normal. But I remember I remember very little of my childhood, but you know, certain things I remember. Like I could tell you exactly, you know, what people were wearing and what the look was on their face. You know, and I remember one time, my father was having it out with my sister, and my mother stepped in the way, and my father punched my mother in the face, and you know, my sister got on the phone and called the police, and the police showed up at my house, and you know, my father got arrested in my living room right in front of me, and I could tell you exactly what he was wearing that day. You know, I remember sitting on the couch feeling like scared. You know, I carried a lot of guilt for a long time because of that. Like I didn't feel sorry for my sister or for my mother. I was ashamed that all my friends were going to see the cop cars outside and see my father being arrested from my home. Again, I was very self-conscious and very like, you know, I just wanted to hide from all that. In my whole life, I told myself, as soon as I'm old enough, I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to do it differently, you know, which has its, you know, irony in itself eventually. But yeah, you know, I grew up with a lot of potential, you know, on the baseball field, in school. In school, I was in gifted and talented classes just because I was smart, you know, and you know, my friends used to make fun of me, call me egghead, and you know, so I would pretend to be stupid, you know, I'd do stupid things, act up, or you know, maybe get something wrong intentionally just to kind of fit in. And yeah, on the baseball field, you know, that just was another thing that always came really natural to me. It was just give Alan the ball, he's going to win it for us. And you know, I carried a lot of ego and arrogance and pride there. It's kind of funny, you can feel so weak in one area of your life, but be such an egomaniac in the other area. Yeah, I remember vaguely feeling like, you know, I'm so proud of how I am, and you know, a lot of other people around me are either like annoyed by it, you know, or they're just like looking like, who is that guy? You know, I never really was able to make connections because I was either, you know, feeling like crap or I was an egomaniac. And you know, my father was he was a good father, you know, otherwise. He was always there at every single one of my practices, every game, took me fishing, went on vacations every year, you know, taught me how to change oil in a car. You know, I remember one time we broke down in his car at the mall, and you know, that wasn't really one of the fearful moments in my life. Like, how are we going to get home? I didn't even care if we got home. You know, it was like I got time to spend with my father. And I remember we put like water and antifreeze in the radiator like often enough just to get the car home because it was leaking so bad, you know. And I remember that visually too, right? So I remember good things too, but it's amazing how things are imprinted in your memory that you know.
Yeah, or seared in there.
Yeah.
Was your dad different from when he was drinking to not drinking?
I mean, I guess so. I mean, I don't know. I never really knew him drinking.
Okay.
Right? Like, it was just short-tempered. You know, it's like call it now a dry drunk, right? You know, drunk, like not drinking, but, you know, no other solution, which is not easy. I mean, you know, I guess given, you know, 2 kids, wife, chaos, you know, I put myself in the same situation. I see him as a man today and not as this perfect guy that's supposed to be on a pedestal or whatever. But yeah, I remember he was at, like I said, every practice, every game, argue with umpires, argue with the coaches. One time he came on the field and yanked me off the field and told the coach I wasn't playing there anymore and just took me off the team.
How'd that make you feel?
Embarrassed, super embarrassed. You know, he was always defending me, but it made me really embarrassed. I remember I had to go, I grew up in New Jersey. I had to go to this team down in South Jersey and start playing, all new kids. And for the first time in my life, I think something emotionally got in the way. Like, I couldn't hit the ball. You know, I probably had 20 at-bats before I finally got a hit. And all these people were like, who is this guy? Like, he showed up here and he stinks, you know. And I don't know, eventually I hit a ball like off the light in center field, you know what I mean? That's how far I hit it, you know. And things came around. But yeah, I remember just feeling out of place, you know, just not comfortable.
Well, it's pretty obvious why you had a lot of fear and anxiety. I mean, if you saw your dad hit your mom and there was just constant chaos, I mean, I'm sure that was part of you, you know, being so fearful. Yeah. So you grew up in New Jersey. What was it like once you got, you know, into the middle school and high school years? Were you still lacking that self-confidence? Were you prideful because your success in baseball? What did all that look like as you started growing into a young man?
Yeah. I remember I was out playing basketball with friends, riding our bikes around, and I had taken this secondary school aptitude test to go to private school for high school. And I didn't think anything of it. My father told me to take the test, so I took it, and I ended up getting accepted to this really expensive, awesome high school. You know, like, I think it's like 5th in the nation or something like that. And I came home from playing basketball one day, and my parents were like, "Congratulations, you got into this awesome school." And it meant I had to live there in Delaware. You know, so that was a big change for me, like a shock. Like, my parents didn't want me to go to public school like my sister and fall into the same sort of like traps or influences. So they were doing the right thing, but man, did I feel like a fish out of water. Like, I remember going there and being interviewed and them saying like, "Well, what books have you read over the summer? It's like, I don't read books. What? Like, you know, like, we had a language arts textbook last year. Like, I haven't read any literature, any novels or anything like that. And, you know, that's what they were interested. All of a sudden, I went from like this school that was really easy to having an English class with like 7 kids in it, you know, around a round table. And right away, they were like, "What do you think of this Shakespeare book that we're reading?" You know, and I remember my father dropped me off. He had like a Mazda pickup truck, and one kid made fun of my dad's truck. And I mean, that was it for me. You know, I had to live on a dorm. I lived with 2 other guys in a room. I had to shower with other guys in a shower, you know, in like a gang shower type setting, you know. That's all that stuff scared the crap out of me, man. It was like, I had no idea where I was. You know, I had to wear a blazer, a tie, khakis, you know, have my hair done. I didn't even know how to tie a tie when I showed up there. And, I just like everything else, I just tried to I figured out how to fit in. You know, I figured out how I was going to do this thing.
Did you have any option to not go there? Or basically, once you got accepted, your parents were like, "Congratulations, this is where you're going"?
Yeah, you're going. I don't think I fought it, really. I usually don't fight things. Like, you know, I know it's the right thing to do. You you called me and said, hey, let's go on the podcast. And I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, even though there's fear, whatever it is. But, you know, at the time I said, okay, like I'll do it. Maybe I was naive. I didn't know how much was going to be different. You know, I went to school with like really famous kids, like their parents were famous, or they were politicians, or, you know, like Navy admirals and things, you know, and I was there on scholarship. I was there with financial aid. You know, I don't think my parents paid anything. And yeah.
And that was your freshman year you started going there?
Yeah.
So you're talking like 14, 15?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Did you finish there? I mean,
I did.
you stay there all 4 years?
You did. I finished there, and I learned a lot there. I learned a lot. I learned how to put a fork on the left and a knife on the right, and to sit down to a meal with people. I learned how to go to church. I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot in those classes that I took. I learned how to read, essentially. You know, when I got to college to be an engineer, like the entry-level math classes were classes I had already taken. You know, I took religion classes and all types of things. You know, they made sure that, you know, you had an after-school activity in fall, winter, and spring. So I always played a sport, whether it was football, basketball, baseball. I was always active.
Was there any influential coaches or teachers that you really kind of grabbed hold of being away from your parents? I mean, was there anything like that you latched onto, or did you try to keep to yourself?
No, I felt like everybody was against me. I felt like they were all in cahoots, you know, and that's a really bad way to feel. I remember one time I got called into the dean's office because there was this area called the grass docks, like down by the pond, where people used to go out and smoke at the middle of the night or find weed or something and do that. And he called me in, and, you know, with a bunch of other people that were accused of doing that, and said, you know, I know that you've been out there doing this, this, and that, and you should admit it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, basically put me on the spot, and I was like, no, I haven't done that, you know. And the next thing you know, I'm admitting that, like, well, I've smoked a cigarette or two once in a while, and I've done this, I've done that, but I've never done that. And, you know, they write me up for all that stuff and recommend that I get kicked out of school, essentially. Yeah, and you know, through lots of deliberation, they let me stay on, regardless of that I was a delinquent. I mean, it was crazy. Like, looking back, it was just like I felt so like unsupported. You know, unsupported. And I remember the dean looking at me and saying, like, look at the way you're sitting there in the chair, you know, slouching. I didn't even know how to sit upright. I didn't know what that meant to sit in front of a dean and sit at attention. I didn't even know I had to, you know. So yeah, there was times like that. You know, my baseball coach was always really hard on me. You know, at the end of senior year, I had it out with him. You know, essentially, I think my pitching record was 8-2. I remember this like exactly. My batting average was .434. I had like 5 or 6 home runs. I pitched a no-hitter that year. I had a great year. And when we were on stage and they were giving out awards, you know, and they were like, and for the most valuable player, like, I half stood up out of my chair already. And they called some other kid, which I was convinced, you know, he was like the butt kiss kid on the team, you know what I mean? And his parents donated a lot of money to the school, and that's what my brain started telling me. You know, it was like, you know, I see what's really going on in the world now. You know, like, even here it's corrupted. You know, even here I don't have, you know, something pure. And I remember I called my father from the payphone that was in the dorm, and he's like, "What's going on with you, Al?" Like, you know, I said, I don't know, I don't feel so good. You know, we had our awards today, and you know, I didn't get the MVP. Sure enough, my dad hung up the phone, and it was about an hour and 45-minute drive from New Jersey down there. He was down there in under 2 hours, like outside the coach's house, you know, knocking on the door and asking him what happened. You know, and, you know, doing the same thing he did when I was a little kid. He was pointing a finger in his face, cussing him out, telling him that you used this kid, you know, used them for your own benefit, and then you just screwed them. I was embarrassed then too, because my world came into that world, right? But looking back, man, I was proud of my father. You know, I don't think kids even have fathers, right? Let alone somebody to come and defend them like that. Yeah, it was always like a cannon of anger that was aimed, but at least it was something.
Right.
You know, and I really I respected him for that. I felt good about that. You know, I got voted to play in the All-Star game or whatever for the state because of it was all conference or all state or something like that. The other coaches voted for that, right? So that's the only reason why I played, I guess. And I got 1 inning to pitch. There was a bunch of kids on the team, so everybody got like an inning, you know. So I got an inning to pitch, and I remember I grounded out. The second batter in the lineup grounded out, and then I struck out the third and fourth batters, which were like the third and fourth of the second, like, best half of the state, pretty much, you know. And I remember when I came off the field, my coach congratulated me, and I told him, like, you know, what he could do with himself, you know, essentially. I quit playing baseball then, you know. I had a lot of anger, you know, a lot of resentment. I'll show you, I'll hurt me, you know, and yeah. I never wanted to go back there to that school. You know, I just had a 25-year anniversary or reunion. I get messages from people. They try to find me because I don't have social media. They found me on LinkedIn to look me up, and it's like, no, I'm not interested.
So you don't have any friendships from that time that were impactful in any way?
No, you know, the thing that's strange is like the 4 or 5 guys that I got along with, one of them went into the Marines and died. Another one ended up being gay, and he killed himself, and he hung himself. And another one was an alcoholic. He died of alcoholism, I guess, in his own throw-up or something like that. And one of the other ones was asking me how I got sober. You know?
Wow.
And I was giving him advice. And so, you know, I've lived with that in the back of my head that these people are perfect. You know, all these people, this nice, cozy atmosphere, all the air that they put on and everything. Like, I'm not like that. You know, I was always comparing my insides to everybody's outsides. And, you know, and through this whole struggle, somehow I'm here. I'm okay. And those guys are not. You know, like, why is that? You know, what's become of you know, the Ivy League schools they were all going to or whatever it was, you know, it's the same pain and suffering, we're all doing the same thing, you know, so.
Where was your faith at? Was faith part of your life during this time?
No, I wanted to share about that though. The one guy that my advisor senior year was the pastor at the school. You know, he did chapel Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. He was a really old guy, and he was the head pastor. He was my advisor that year. And, you know, he had spent his whole career at this high school, his whole career, right out of seminary school through till he's an old man. And I said to him, I don't know why I asked him, but I said, you know, what made you choose this as a life? You know, like, how did you know that you were meant to be here? And he said, you know, as a young lad, I came and I rode my bike around the ponds. You know, I was asking that same question, like, what is it I want to do? And I was asking that question, and I saw a beautiful rainbow, you know, and I felt like I had my answer. I was in the right place. And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. I was like, you've based your whole life on a rainbow? You know, like, what a bunch of nonsense, right? And so then I carried on. You know, more instances of those, like, glimpses of or questioning of being like, what is that? You know, but I think that was like one of the first ones that I can remember where I was just like, how? Why? What kind of sense does that make? That's so beyond anything that I've learned so far to count on.
Was there resentment towards your parents for sending you there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I always felt like my parents were like, do as I say, not as I do. Like, I had all this potential. I was supposed to go to special school. I was supposed to be a baseball player. And, you know, they worked at the same jobs for the state of New Jersey, you know, same level incomes, never really like motivated or anything. I know my mother will watch this and probably cry, and I don't mean it, you know. I love her, you know, and she lives with me today, you know, and we've come a long way. But yeah, in the beginning I had resentment. You know, it was like, if you have a family like mine, like, you know, you'd be screwed up too. You would drink because this family's intolerable. You know, I remember like on holidays, you know, turkeys and pies would go flying across the room, and you know. One thing that I remember was just kind of sad, like after Christmas, you know, there would always be so much burden from the debt that was taken on to get the presents and things, and I would hear the fighting about it, that I wanted to like box the stuff up and bring it back. You know, that was the kind of house I grew up in. It was like, you could always feel it, you know. I didn't even want it because it was like, you know, even high school and all the stuff they had to go through to send me there. You know, it was just like, why? You know.
Have you gotten that answer?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Like you know, my parents did everything they could. They're human beings, just like me. You know, I had to look in the mirror one day and look at my father in the mirror. I go, oh my God, there he is. I'm doing the same thing that he always did. You know, faced with the same struggle, the same things that we're all here for, right? I haven't had kids yet, but if I did during that time period, I don't know what things would have been like.
So you graduate from essentially the prep school, right?
Yeah.
And you decide to go to college. Talk about that transition from high school into college.
Yeah, so I go to college. I went to Rutgers University in New Jersey. That was actually my fallback. I was going to go to Tulane. I got accepted there, and that was a good moment with my father as well. You know, my plan was to, okay, you know, I gave up on this baseball thing, but maybe I'll walk on. I'll go talk to the coach. I'll try out. I'll take it one step at a time. We had driven down there, packed the whole car, driven down there. I was ready to move in with my roommate. And, you know, he let me drive. And somewhere in New Orleans, getting there, I almost had an accident, you know, where I took a left turn in front of another car that had to, like, slam on their brakes. And, you know, I was just able to get off the road, and I was, like, sort of having a panic attack. My father was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I don't want to go to school here." He said, "Okay, turn around. Let's go back to New Jersey." Yeah. So that's where, like, you know, my father would show up in my life, you know. I just knew that I didn't know why was I in New Orleans? I've been in, like, on Pluto for my whole life, and now I'm in New Orleans, going to a school that I don't belong at, you know. I don't know where I belong, but, you know, I was ready to be home, you know, like, you know, and on the way back, like, we already made some phone calls to, you know, go talk to the dean at Rutgers, which was my fallback. And yeah, I kind of thought maybe I'd get like a semester off, but no, my dad was hardcore. Like, you know, I was there registering the next day, you know. So he let me slide when it was important, but, you know, otherwise he was always on top of me. But yeah, I got to college, and it was like, man, they don't care if you're in class. Like, it was completely different from my high school. They don't care if you show up. They don't care if you go out and you smoke a cigarette. You know,
It's all on you.
Yeah, it's all on me. I could just show up for the midterm. There was girls everywhere. There was drinking everywhere. You know, and I just drank. You know, that first time I had a drink was when I was in high school. And that's important, I think, for my story. It was like, you know, I felt this just sense of ease and comfort. You know, I felt like almost like goosebumps. Like I could feel the breeze blowing over my skin. You know, it just felt so at peace. You know, I just felt like all that, the noise and the chatter just went away. I felt like, you know, I could speak to women. I could make jokes. People laughed back at the joke. It was like, whoa, what's going on? It was like all of a sudden I was given the key to life. Like I've been missing it this whole time. And that first time I drank, me and my roommate got 2 bottles of Captain Morgan and a 2-liter of Coke, because we thought we would drink rum and Cokes, right? We got so sick that first time. But I remember remember the next morning, like head pounding, like not remembering what happened, but just being like, I want to do that again. You know, I think most people's reaction would be like, I'm never doing that again.
Right.
Like, that was awful. I was like, I can't wait to do that again. Next time I won't get 2 bottles of Captain Morgan. You know what I mean? I'll start with something smaller, but like I'll try to dial it in one of these days. You know, I'll figure it out. Never figured it out, but yeah, in college that went to a whole new level. That was just like frat houses, beer pong, chicks, like all the time. You know, just craziness.
So you obviously have an addictive personality, right? I mean, that came from your family. So once you got that taste, it was on.
Yeah.
And you couldn't control it?
Yeah, I know.
Is it safe to say?
Mixed with that and having self-confident issues, right? Like being self-conscious, that probably gave you that false hope of like,
Yeah.
this makes me feel a lot better. Like I have confidence. I'm a whole new me. Like I get it.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
How were you doing in school as far as your grades in college?
My first semester I had all A's and B's, and the second semester I had D's and F's. So it just went off like a ski jump, you know. It was just like, and then I had to sort of like, you know, get myself situated a little bit better. And, you know, I realized you could drop a class if you were doing really horrible. So I actually finished in 5 years instead of 4, but I finished like bare minimum 2 something, you know, GPA. Which I've always been really ashamed of. You know, I always like couldn't present that to employers or anything. But, you know, back then I just thought like, I'm winning, you know, I'm having fun and I'm getting by. Like, you know, getting by is okay. I always thought that even afterwards when I would be drinking all night and still go to work the next day, I would think, oh, I went to work, so, you know, I did it.
So you graduate from college.
Yeah.
And it's time to go into the real world, right?
Yeah.
So you got a degree. So what was your degree in?
Mechanical and aerospace engineering.
That's not an easy degree to get.
Yeah.
So you graduate. What's your job coming out of school?
Coming out of school, I was a bartender. Yeah. I was too afraid to get a real job. I remember once Lockheed Martin had visited my college for a job fair, and all my friends were like, come on, let's go. And I was too drunk to go. Like I was too hungover. I was still drunk. I still smelled like alcohol. And I couldn't go. And yeah, that's just what it was like. I mean, I had a friend that was opening a bar. I was making good money. I couldn't really see any reason why to go the other way. You know, I was making, I don't know, $1,000 a week cash, you know. And everything was exactly the same way. I had alcohol, drugs, women, whatever. And yeah, I mean, they carried on probably, I think, for 3 years out of college before I finally went and got a real job, you know.
What'd your parents say? Anything about that?
Yeah, they were always disappointed, you know, always would make little comments. My mom would always remind me that, you know, I was a mechanical engineer and I didn't even know how to fix my own car, you know, things like that. Like I, you know, was always busy doing something else. Yeah, they didn't pressure me too much.
So when did it click, or what changed to make you get a real job?
I guess maybe it was just one of those half bottoms where I was like, what am I doing with my life? I got to do something. And I started out and found a really low-paying job, which was really hard to take at the time. But I figured this is good. You know, it's a 40-hour-a-week job. You know, but, you know, I had the two lifestyles now. You know, I was living 2 different lives. It's really hard to live 2 different lives and not have them overlap ever. You know, again, like I'd be out drinking at night, maybe doing some other kind of drugs or something, and then showing up to a job site at 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, to inspect something, you know. And when I got fired from that job, that first job, I remember I was, you know, they called me, my boss called me into his office, and he's like, you know, your truck has a tracking device on it. Like, you know that, right? And it's like, no, well, it's been parked like at, you know, these different places, you know, every night. And I used to take it to like, go to a dealer's house, to pick up whatever I needed. And it's so funny, man. Like, it was just like, wow, like the game is over, and I walked out of that being fired with a banker's box with all my stuff from my desk, right, on my shoulder. I put the stuff in my car, and I got a text from a recruiter that said they had a job for me in North Jersey, at this company that I work for now. Literally the same day that I got fired from my job, I was interviewing a couple days later at this other job, and I got the job. And I was getting paid again within like 2 or 3 weeks of getting fired from that job. And that didn't get me sober.
I was going to say that, you really didn't learn anything.
There was
right?
no lesson.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So you go, new job, you're still continuing to live that double life.
Yep.
At some point in time, something changes.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same thing. I was working for this company that I'm at now, and we were in College Park, Maryland, working on this pipeline project. And I went out to a bar with a couple of coworkers, got hammered. I think the cops saw us stumbling out of the bar, right, and get into the car. I was driving, do a U-turn, start coming down the road, immediately get pulled over. The cop asked me to get out of the car. I'm like, okay, I get out of the car. Can you walk to the back bumper, please? I do that, and I fall against the car. That's how drunk I am, Needless to say, I get arrested for drunk driving. They bring me to the police station. I remember sitting in that cell, and it was kind of just like a white room, like a metal bench that I'm like handcuffed to, like a camera on me. And I'm starting to like come to, and I start panicking. I'm like, where am I? I feel claustrophobic. And I say that because this was another one of those realizations that I just took another step down that ladder, another rung farther down, where I was like, oh, this is new. Like, what do I do now? I just got arrested while I'm at work. My boss had to pick me up from the police station. He was there on that trip. And, I was a mess. I didn't sleep at all, and I showed up to work the next day anyway. I work on pipelines, so I got into this 96-inch diameter pipeline. I climb down this ladder, and I go in, and I'm working on all this stuff. And his boss shows up to the job site, and they're like, oh, so-and-so's outside. He's coming into the pipe. And I'm like, oh, God, I was hoping I could hide in here all day. He comes in, and he runs down to me, and he goes, hey, what are you guys working on? I give him the whole rundown of everything we're working on, the progress of the whole project. And he says, okay, he gets out. Eventually I'm done with the work day, and, my boss calls me, and he goes, everybody got together, and they talked about what happened last night, and they decided that you're going to be suspended for a couple of weeks without pay. And, everybody's pretty disappointed, but they were really impressed that you showed up for work today, and you're a good guy. Like, everybody likes you. You know what you're doing, and you care. So we're only going to suspend you. That didn't teach me anything. I still had like a bonus check coming to me. I remember after that, I was sitting by the pool, and I took a picture of myself with a Corona, sending it to my coworkers, like, you suckers, man. Like, you guys are at work, and I'm here enjoying myself. And, that wasn't the bottom either. That was 2009. I didn't hit bottom until 2010. It was just like another debacle. I think alcohol was fun. And then finally there was some consequences, and then it was like less fun and more consequences, and then it was all consequences eventually. I went to this trip in Houston for work, and I remember I couldn't wait to get there because all my coworkers were already there. They were at the bar. They were messaging me that, they were already there and to hurry up. So I couldn't wait, man. So I threw my bag in the hotel room, raced across the street to the bar, have this crazy, insane evening. I have to be on a job site at 7 o'clock in the morning the next morning. And I wake up, I come to, and I'm thinking like, oh God, there's my bag still on the ground. Like, I better get dressed quick and get ready. And I opened the bag, and I realized the whole bag is like soaking wet, and I don't know why, you know. And I realized that I peed on it in the middle of the night. I must have got up in a blackout and pissed all over my suitcase. So I literally am pulling clothes out, trying to figure out what's the driest. I'm like trying to air dry stuff with the hair dryer and iron stuff to just kind of put myself together to get to work. And to get on a job site and run a safety meeting, right? and be in charge of some important things. And, you know, I got through that day. I got by anyway. You know, again, it's like, you know, these two things are colliding and I'm making it through somehow. Living this double life. The next night, same thing. I'm drinking again. You know, that morning I said to myself, I don't want to drink. I can't do this anymore.
Was that the first time you'd said that?
No, probably not. But I remember this week it was like getting louder and louder. It was like I don't want to drink anymore. You know, but by the afternoon I'd get a sandwich in my stomach. The work would get completed. You know, a drink sounded like a good idea again that evening. So I went out, had a drink, you know, I ended up getting drunk again. And I remember, you know, I asked for the car back from the valet, and these valet guys bring the car, and it's got the window smashed out the back. And I'm like, what happened? Oh, I don't know, like, read the sign, like, we're not responsible for when, you know, if something gets vandalized or whatever. And I realized my laptop bag was in the back seat with some textbooks I had because I had started grad school. You know, I was trying to get a master's degree at the same time, and I just lose it. You know, I accuse the black and Latino bouncers and valet guys that, you know, they called their homies in the hood to vandalize my car, and, you know, I just go off with racial slurs and all kinds of stuff. You know, like you know, a distinguished gentleman, and you know, so I've been fighting all these bouncers basically outside this bar. My coworkers come out and they're like, "What's going on?" Like, "Oh my God, he was trying to drive. Like he did that before. Like, this is a disaster." And I said, "You know what? The hell with all of you people. Like, I'm walking. I'm gonna walk to the hotel, and I'm walking from this bar just to try to get out of there too, because I don't know if they're calling the police or what, you know." And this girl that I was talking to at the bar comes driving up. She goes, "Oh my God, there you are. You need a ride?" And I was like, yeah, I could use a ride. She drives me back to the hotel, and she's like, "Hey, do you want to party?" Like, she pulls out this bag, and I'm like, "Yeah, like hell yeah, let's go." And next morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, I haven't slept again. You know, I got to go back to work again. And you know, I mean, I had spent so much of my life like that, you know, saying that I can't live like this, and just doing it over and over and over again, being this guy that I don't even recognize. And I was on a plane back to Newark, New Jersey, and I said to myself, "Alan, like, don't drink. You can't drink anymore. You're done. I'm done." I knew it, like, through and through in my soul that I was done. I was not going to touch another drink. And I landed in Newark, powered up my phone, and one of my buddies had left a message on there like, "Hey, Alan, what's going on? Hey, we're hanging out in New Brunswick." That's where I went to college, Rutgers. We're at Kelly's Corner, which was like this little Irish pub we used to go to. It's dollar burger night, and we're playing darts. We're shooting darts. Like, you should stop by. I was like, hell yeah. Boom. To the bar, drinking, shooting darts, you know, flirting with the bartender. You know, I'm just this king guy, you know, that's just like, you know, smooth and everything, you know. And I looked in the mirror, and I remember seeing all the bottles lined up behind the bar, you know, in the mirror that was behind it, and I could see my face. And I didn't even recognize who I was looking at. You know, for the first time in my life, I put the drink down. You had like a Coors Light or something that was half empty. And I said, I got to go. And I looked at my buddy and I said, I got to leave. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I got to go to an AA meeting. And he's like, what? Are you crazy? Like, what are you, nuts? I said, no, I got to go. And I remember I went home. You know, it was like a, I don't know, like a soldier walking off of a battlefield, like shell shocked. Like I went home, I looked up the meetings, and the next day I went to a meeting. I remember I talked to my father too. I said, I can't stop drinking. He's like, oh, that's good. I got a warm seat waiting for you. I've had it warmed and ready for you for a long time. And I hated that. I hated that he got to laugh and smile about that. And I hated that he was right the whole time. He had been telling me the whole time, Alan, 9 out of 10 people don't live like you do. What do you think they do every day? I'm like, I have no idea, but it just sounds boring. I don't know. They get up, they go to church, they golf. I don't know. They drive their BMWs around, and that's not me. That's not who I am. And he tried to tell me so many times, Alan, you give up something so small, and you get everything back in return. I just had no idea what he was talking about. But
Was your father in AA?
he was, yeah. He got sober right before I was born, so he was 36 years sober when he died in 2015.
So you go to AA. What's that like for you? What's that transition from going from partying essentially every night to AA? What's that transition look like?
It was pretty strange. I kind of knew what it was going to be like, because when I was a little kid, I would go to meetings with my father or just kind of tag along. We always had a big book on our coffee table or literature of some sort. But I went to this meeting in Princeton, New Jersey called the Winner's Circle. It was a 7 a.m. meeting on a Saturday morning, and it was in a church. And, I walked in there, and I was really anxious. I remember I couldn't look at anybody in the face. I would get this kind of like nervous feeling, like I could shake if I looked somebody in the eye. I was looking at my feet, and we sat in a circle, and they said, okay, we start the meeting by going around the circle. Just introduce yourself by saying your name. And everybody was like, oh, my name's Bob. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Diane. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm like, oh my God, it's going to get around to me. I'm counting the number of people until it gets to me. And I'm thinking, what is it like to say Alan alcoholic? It sounds like a tongue twister. What if I screw it up? I'm freaking out, so I can't hear anything else that's going on. I'm just in my head. And then of course I do screw it up and mutter it out. Everybody's like, thanks, Alan, welcome. And I don't remember anything that was going on in the meeting. I remember there was this guy, Ted, and he was in a wheelchair. And he looked like a real alcoholic. Everybody else I wasn't sure about, but he looked like a real alcoholic. And I was like, man, they must have picked this guy up from a dumpster or something somewhere and brought him to a meeting. He's rough. When I was walking out of that meeting, I heard his voice scream Alan over the noise and commotion of everybody afterwards, and I knew it was him. And I was like, oh my God, it's that crazy guy. I was like, I don't know. I thought to myself, I have a decision to make. There's my Ford Explorer in the parking lot. It's got one broken spring, so it's got a lean to the back. It's got a rejected inspection sticker on the windshield, a cracked windshield. I got everything going on, and I'm an egomaniac, but underneath everything, there's cracks everywhere and corrosion and stuff. And parents didn't want to let me in their houses anymore. Mom didn't want to answer the door. And he said Alan, and I knew I was going to have to turn around, and he was going to expect something from me. I was going to have to do something. I was going to have to get honest with somebody. And he said, sit down. He was in a wheelchair. And he said, now that you're one of us, and that really bothered me because I didn't sign up for anything. I was like, no, I didn't sign up for anything. I don't know. Yeah, I said I'm an alcoholic, but I'm just here to observe. And he's like, now that you're one of us, I'm going to have to show you how this thing works. I was like, oh, this will be good. He'll give me the recipe here for how to, not drink and live a healthy life. And he's like, you see that Jeep over there? I was parked in a handicapped spot. He's like, I'm going to need you to wheel me over to that Jeep. That's my Jeep. He's like, can you do that? And I was like, yeah, okay. So I unlock the brakes. So I'm wheeling him over. He's like, okay, you have to angle me just like this, and you have to put the brakes on and open the door 45 degrees, and I want you to put my hand on the door And at this point, I'm like getting annoyed from all the instructions. Like, I don't really know how to love anybody at this point. Like, I'm really just nasty. You know, I'm just a nasty individual, and I'm annoyed. Like, and he's like, you're gonna have to like pick me up and kind of like get my butt onto the seat, you know. And I'll try to help as much as I can, but if you could do that, and I was thinking I'd just drop him and leave. You know, I just want to get out of here. And, you know, I got his butt on the seat, and then, you know, I get his legs in the car, and he's like, whoa, you know, like he's he's entertained by it because he can feel like how not like, you know,
How you don't want to be
soft I am with him, you know, like I'm just aggravated. But he's like entertained by it. And then he's like, you know, he asked me to put the seatbelt on him, and I'm like thinking, man, his face is right there, and he's going to cough something on me, and I don't belong here. And, you know, I put the seatbelt on him, and, you know, he says to me, he's like, you know, you don't ever have to feel this way again. And I just broke down in tears. It was like years of anxiety just came shaking off of me, and I just couldn't stop crying. People say that stuff in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's profound. You know, it's like you don't have to drink again even if you want to. It's like, really? Like, I had to, you know? And he's like, it's okay, man. He's like, look, why don't you just follow me over to our house? We're somebody, you know, we're going to get bagels, and we're going to have the meeting after the meeting. And I was like, oh, no, okay, I'll go pick up some bagels. He's like, no, someone's taking care of the bagels. You just need to follow the car, you know? Okay, so I follow him over there. Beautiful house in Hopewell, New Jersey. And his family comes out. I'm like, where's this house? Whose house is this? Like, whose family is this? You know, they come out, they get Ted out of the car, and, you know, they thank me for helping. And, you know, it's his family. You know, it's the people that care about him. I'm like, he doesn't live in a dumpster. Like, you know. Remember, he asked me, he said, you know, you should ask Dave to be your sponsor. And I said, okay, you know, I'll ask Dave. Dave had a light blue Volkswagen Beetle with like a sunflower on the dash. And I was like, oh my God, I knew these guys were, something's messed up about these people, you know. But I asked him anyway. Turns out he was borrowing his wife's car for the day, you know, and he had a Suburban or something, you know. Like, I was delusional. Like, everybody else was okay. Like, I was screwed up.
And you were starting to recognize that.
For sure. Yeah, big time.
And that's a punch in the mouth.
It is, yeah. It's like, where do I go from here? You know, I've wasted so much of my life now. My credit is screwed up. I don't have $1 to my name. I don't even know where I'm going to go next. Mom doesn't even want to open the door. You know, I was supposed to have potential, you know.
So that was your bottom.
That was my bottom, yeah.
So how do you crawl out of that? You just continue to take that step in AA. You continue to lean on those guys, all those people in AA. What's like life look for you now coming, you know, as you get more involved into AA?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they told me it's one day at a time. That's all we do is we stay sober today, which I could manage. That was manageable. You know, they told me to pray in the morning, hit my knees in the morning, hit my knees at night. Ask God for help, thank him at the end of the day. Told me to call other alcoholics during the day and see how they're doing, check on them instead of thinking about myself. Told me to go to a meeting. They were like, you drank every day, go to a meeting every day. I was like, how many meetings do I have to go to? 90 meetings in 90 days? That's insane, you know? Yeah, and I just took it from there. You know, I didn't understand how hitting my knees was going to solve my problems, because I had like financial problems. You know, I owed money to a couple of bookies in Trenton, New Jersey. You know, the Italian type. You know, and another genius idea I had while I was drinking to play poker. You know, I didn't know how that was going to solve my problems. You know, but it did.
Slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely. Yeah, I remember that church where that meeting was became my home group. And, you know, which I thought was funny because in Princeton, New Jersey, there's like the intellectual elite, you know, there's a lot of like atheists and agnostics. And I was thinking how ironic it is that they're all being sheltered in a church and being kept safe from alcohol and everything else, you know. But the sun used to come up in the morning, and I would see the cross like way up in the sky on the top of that building. And I would just stop and I would look at it for a little bit. And then I would go inside and, you know, I would sneak off to the sanctuary and I would kneel down. It was quiet in there. I'd be like, you know, yeah, see, there's nothing in here. You know, like I don't feel anything. I don't see anything. You know, but that's kind of where it started, you know, and it became my life. Like, I changed everything. They say people, places, and things, you know, you change everything. I remember on a Friday night, and this is where I really believed, I think. You know, on a Friday night, I went to pizza with all the guys before the meeting. The Friday night meeting was the meeting I would go with my father. You know, he was there too. It was funny because one night on the way home from that meeting, he called me ahead to warn me of a DUI checkpoint on the way home. I was like, Dad, you know, I'm coming from the AA meeting with you. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot, you know. Like, that's how much I used to be on his mind, or how much I would worry my parents, you know. But we did pizza before the meeting, smoked cigarettes before the meeting, had the meeting, smoked cigarettes after the meeting, went to Starbucks after, and like chopped it up there and made fun of each other. Like, you know, the first time in my life I was like belly laughing again, you know, and having a good time. And I remember I got home to my apartment that night and I hit my knees before bed and I said, you know, God, I really enjoyed this day. I really enjoyed this day. And for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't in control of whether I would wake up in the morning or not. I was going to lay my head on that pillow, and I had no control over waking up in the morning. Like, I had spent my whole life trying to kill myself to sleep, you know, and then take something to wake up. And I cried to God, and I said, but I would really love to do it again if you'll let me. And yeah.
It's powerful, man.
Yeah.
So life's, you know, you're coming out of this addiction and life's starting to change for you. You're getting faith in your life. Where was your body, your health? You know, you're starting to get your mental aspect back to where you're actually learning what it's like to live a real faith-filled life and doing it day by day.
Yeah.
But talk about, you know, and we talked about it coming up here from the airport, you know, we both share similar experiences of being the big kids, right?
Yeah.
You know, always a little taller, always a little bigger, heftier. You know, I battled that self-confidence a lot too as a kid because I was a fat kid,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so I never wanted to go swimming, never wanted to take my shirt off. I mean, I share that sentiment with you. So where were you at, you know, as you're starting to work through, you know, getting away from that addiction, where were you at physically?
Physically, I think I was okay. You know, we joked about it, like it's better to eat a cheeseburger and drink a milkshake than go out and have a beer, you know. So we'd always do something where we were eating, but I was generally okay. You know, I was sober and, you know, I was starting to get healthier. And actually, you know, a year and a half into sobriety, that boss that picked me up from the police station suggested that I run this program in Miami, Florida, you know, working for, you know, with a major client there. And I was like, me? I was like, you remember, right? And he's like, yeah, but you're not that guy anymore. You know, it'd be times like that, like we talked about this earlier, right? When people observe you differently than you observe yourself, you know, and I was behaving different. So I said, heck yeah, man, I'm down. You know, I'm ready to go to Miami, Florida. Completely different from the way that I used to be, right? Where I was scared to death of everything. I was like, this is awesome, man, you know. Completely different culture. Very few white people, right? It's like, you know, complete Latin culture and complete insanity. But I loved the idea. And, you know, I moved down there. And, you know, it's really easy to work out when it's nice out. It's always nice and beautiful. You always feel like you want to do something. But I actually got married a year after moving there. And my wife, she was Cuban. She's Cuban. And I started eating, man. I was comfortable. Like, I actually started putting on weight. You know, I was probably like 240 when I moved to Miami. I was 305 the last time I checked, in 2014, I think it was. And I know I kind of like went nuts for another week after that. So it might have been like 310. But then I started, really, my father passed away in 2015 from a heart attack. They found him dead in his apartment, several days after he must have died. And, I got that call. That was really hard. It was good to be sober and be able to be there and to not be overly emotional and, go through the whole process and be the adult. My sister was a mess, but, I was a mess too, but, it was okay. After that, I started being a little bit more conscious of my health. I stopped smoking in 2015 too. My wife's grandfather had a collapsed lung, and she's like, "You're going outside to smoke while he has a collapsed lung. This doesn't make any sense." And I'm like, "I know it doesn't make any sense. Stop bothering me. Everybody's bothering me my whole life, But I did, and slowly I started getting into fitness. Started running a little bit. I started looking, started listening to all the YouTubes and the podcasts and stuff and motivating myself. And I thought, what's the most ridiculous thing that I could ever do? And I came up with run a marathon. And I hadn't even run a 5K yet. But I downloaded a Couch to 5K app. I did that. Next thing you know, I was running a 10K. I was signing up for, Miami half marathon. And did that. Felt like I nearly died. But I quickly started watching these like YouTubes about, trail running and ultra running. And I was like, I want to do that. Like the Western States 100. I'm like, that looks awesome. And this is like one of the brilliant things about being sober now is like, I actually know what I want to do. Like I know who I want to be. I can actually see something that interests me and do it. Like, it's incredible, and it sounds so far-fetched and weird to run 100 miles, but whatever, like you only understand if you understand, I guess. But, I'm going from a half marathon to signing up for the Georgia Death Race, which was 75 miles, right? So I'm like a good alcoholic. I'm a little OCD, I guess, but I'm all in, man. Like I'm fasting, intermittent fasting, I'm eating better. I'm doing CrossFit at that time. I'm signing up for this ultra marathon. And that's just kind of been my life since then. I really attached to the 3 of 7 guys because, Navy SEAL, like, do hard shit kind of mentality. Yeah. I love it. Christian, talking about God, guns, trail running. I mean, it's like, off-road vehicles. I'm just like, sign me up, So, it's the kind of stuff that has really motivated me. And, it sounds crazy, but, I think I got to talk about this. Like my conception of God has evolved since I got sober. I never grew up with an idea of God. I used to stand in that chapel at school and not be aggravated that we're kneeling and standing and have a blazer on and I'm sweaty and I don't know what is going on. I hate it. I never understood what God was. And, I had that awakening hitting my knees before bed. But, over the time, especially when my father passed away, I started feeling like, maybe God is like a loving father. Maybe God is that guy. Like my father, I remember once I visited home, I flew to Newark from Miami, and I told my dad before I got on the plane, like, hey, I'll call you when I land, and then you can head out because it's Newark. By the time my bags go through and I get them, it's going to be at least 45 minutes to an hour. He's like, yeah, no problem. I land in Newark, I turn my phone on, and I have like 20 missed calls, messages from my dad, like, where the hell are you? I've been circling the airport, you know what I mean? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I told you to wait until, and he's like, well, I just wanted to head out on time. And that was my dad's way of loving me, Again, it was like annoying. I wanted to like suffocate him and kill him, but when I finally get out, he would throw me the keys and he knew I wanted to drive because I was a hothead, like he never drove fast enough for me. So he would throw me the keys like, all right, take over. And, you know, he would like say to me, like, hit it, Al, you know, like he would get entertained by like how aggressive I would drive. And so I started thinking, like, you know, maybe God is like that father that's like circling the airport, like waiting for me to land, you know. And I would imagine God sitting in the passenger seat with me and, you know, riding along with me. And, you know, my dad liked the Florida Keys a lot. And once I was driving from Miami down to Key West to visit my mom and sister who had flown in. And I got up early and the sun was coming up. And, you know, I was driving through Key Largo and I looked at this seat, you know, and I kind of imagined that, you know, like God was with me, you know, and I just was like seeing the sun coming up. And then I could have sworn I heard like, hit it, Al. You know, it's like, where did that come from? You know, and I started crying. I cried from Key Largo all the way to Key West for like almost 3 hours, just bawling my eyes out. Tears of joy, you know, like tears of like, now I was grieving my father, you know, and I just remembered all these emotions and things. And, you know, there was once when I was running and I was like sort of just getting in that flow state. And I imagined my father like on my shoulder, like, you know, when somebody's in the back seat, like looking over your shoulder, like, you know, trying to like excited at how you're driving, like hit it, Al, you know, like there was something spiritual inside of me that was excited about me running, wanted to see how far I could go or wanted to root me on, you know. And I would remember like looking up at the clouds and I'd have tears in my eyes while I'm running. Like I'd be crying while I'm running, you know, just like, whose life is this? You know, where have I ended up? And, lots of moments like that in sobriety and in this new spiritual journey where I go like, you know, who's got it better than us? You know, nobody. And, you know, why do I run these things? I don't know, most of the time I'm aggravated. You know, most of the time I'm irritated that there's a pebble in my shoe or, you know, I'm exhausted. There was the Georgia Death race that I was doing, that I was 20 miles in and you know, I think I was running. I felt good enough to run. And this is like the funny thing part about ultra running. It's like, oh, you feel good enough to run. And as soon as you feel good enough to run, something happens, you know. And I got a stick caught between my feet. And I tripped and went head over heels and slammed down on the trail. And I went to stand back up and my like quad cramped. And I fell on the ground. And I was like, oh, my God, I'm only 20 miles in. Like, what am I going to do? Take some salt, get myself up going. Next thing you know, I'm going up this hill, and it's kind of muddy and sloppy, and it's really, like, steep. And I'm grabbing these little tiny trees that are on the side of the path just to, like, pull myself up and to throw myself in front of for a second to take a break. And I'm like, I got 55 more miles. Like, I'm not going to make it. Like, I'm done. And I said, God, like I could really use your help right now. And I was leaning against one of those trees, and I swear I heard it in my head, like, who do you think put the tree here? And I remember I looked down, and you know, it was like everything was dead. There was leaves and sticks and stuff. There was this little white flower at the base of the tree. And I had this thought, like, you know, there's all these people waiting at the aid station for me. One of my buddies was there with me to crew me eventually. You know, somebody else flew me there. You know, blood is pumping through my legs and through my body and climbing me up this hill. Like, I'm not in charge of any of that. Like, I can't do this on my own. Like, what have I actually done? I couldn't even, I whittled it all the way down to, okay, well, Alan, you made the decision to run this thing. And then I thought to myself, what if I didn't even put that idea in my head? You know, like, none of this has anything to do with me. None of it, you know? And, yeah, I mean, that's just like, those are the kind of things, you know, I mean, 10 minutes later, I'm cussing again and I'm like tripping and aggravated, but like those moments of where you feel that peace. 2 weeks before the ROP course, I did a 50-miler in Miami, and we went over a couple of the causeways, And I mean, it's brutal hot. There's no shade along the highways or causeways in Miami. It was so hot. It was so, that's the whole point of the whole thing. It's like a torture fest. You know, I went over a couple of causeways and there was boats going underneath with like women in bikinis and music blasts and guys drinking. And you know, I went through Miami Beach and there was guys leaning against like Lamborghinis, taking selfies and stuff. And I'm out here with like a pack running 50 miles. And I was like, nobody wants to be doing what I'm doing. Everybody wants that, those things. I've tried that. I was miserable. Nobody even sees me right now, you know, doing what I'm doing. Like, there's value in doing what I'm doing, you know, and it's so counterintuitive, you know, that you would get strengthened through something that's just like
Painful.
Painful.
Man, amazing. I mean, just sitting here listening to your transformation, you know, from childhood to high school to alcohol to ultra marathon running, your growth and your faith, unbelievably powerful. And you shared some of those stories with me when we were on the ROP. So as we were coming up here today, you know, we were talking about the different things that we thought we were going to do individually by doing the rite of passage. And then what came from that really we didn't expect. And really, like for me, I'm still unpacking that. And I think you are too, to an extent. So can you talk about what led you to sign up for the rite of passage, and then talk about that experience of getting there and going through it and what you learned from it?
Sure, yeah. Well, I got a divorce that was finalized in March. You know, I felt like I got to a point in my life where I had just grown, you know, to a certain point spiritually. You know, I felt really like my marriage was not, you know, returning to me what I was putting in. It was a really hard decision to make because I'm not a quitter. You know what I mean? I just thought like that's the weakest thing that you can do is leave your wife, and it's terrible. Until I got to that point where I couldn't do it anymore. You know, I understand it now. I really do. You know, we're on good terms. We're amicable and things, and I have a lot of respect for my ex-wife. And you know, we just didn't know how to live together. We didn't know how to be married. You know, but so, you know, this thing is getting finalized. I'm moving out. You know, I'm looking online and I see the ROP course on the YouTube. And I was like, you know, these are the types of things I need to do this year. You know, I need to make this some Alan stuff, some Alan adventure. This might be, you know, the only time I get to do it before the next phase that, you know, consumes my life or whatever. So this is what I want to do. I've been listening to these guys forever, and sounds great, 24 hours in the woods. You know, I wasn't too intimidated by it, like staying up for 24 hours. I had done that before. I was more intimidated by Chad and the guys and 3 of 7 and not letting them down. Like, my why was kind of like, yeah, I need to find myself a little bit this year. Even though in finding myself showed me that I needed a divorce, right? Like, I've been pretty rock solid lately. Like, it wasn't too much I needed to figure out, but, you know, I just felt like, you know, I needed to do some of those things. And my why was kind of like, you know, anchored in meeting the guys, finding myself. And I literally, when I signed up for the application, I told them, I think I just don't want to be in charge. Like, I don't want to lead. I want to learn how to take orders, and I want to just shut the hell up, because those are things I'm not good at, you know, and that was it, you know. And the funny thing was I thought about flying the night before just to make sure that I get there on time. And I'm like, no, the 8 o'clock flight that arrives in Atlanta at 10 a.m. is fine. Like, we don't have to be there until 5:30 p.m. You know, it's more than enough time out. I'm like, you'll be fine. I get to the Miami airport and the flight keeps getting delayed. And then finally there's mechanical issues. They need a new plane from Atlanta to come. You know, I switch airlines. that airline gets delayed. And next thing you know, like my greatest fear of being that guy, all I wanted to do is shut the hell up, be in compliance, follow the rules. The next thing you know, I'm that guy. And I'm emailing Blake saying, I'm going to be late, man. I don't think I'm going to make it before the meeting's over. And he's like, that's fine. He's like, it happens, whatever. Your team will catch you up to speed. I'm like, man, I'm driving myself crazy all day in the airport. And then on the drive, and finally I get there and the meeting is just ending and I'm barreling up. And next thing you know, I'm looking at Chad and looking at Cornbread and looking at Blake. I'm like, oh my God, it's really them, you know? Like Chad's a little bit smaller than I thought. So is Cornbread, you know, and I'm like, they're just normal dudes, you know, just quickly trying to like get an idea of what's going on. I didn't feel humiliated because I don't know, I'm different these days, you know? Like I had a reason. I was able to look him in the eye and tell him exactly why I was late. And he said, you know, your team's going to be responsible for making sure you get up to speed. I'm like, that's kind of the first time I realized, like, oh, there's a team here. And that really wasn't on my mind. It was like, I got to do this. I got to be prepared. And, yeah, the team was there. I thought some guys were a little overboard. They were, like, really planning a lot. Like, this is how we're going to do it. Or this is how we're going to run it. And there's going to be a no-fail policy and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, let's just go. Like, you know what I mean? What's with all the plans and stuff? People have tents and everything. And I have this little tent. I've never camped out before. So I have this little tiny pop-up tent with a little pad that goes in. And I remember somebody, I don't know if it was Tucker or somebody came to me with like a couple extra pads. Or maybe it was you, I don't know. And somebody said, do you need one? And I was like, no, I have everything I need, thanks. You know, I zipped myself up in there and it was nice, man. It was nice. Like I wasn't ready to sleep. I didn't sleep at all, really. I think my eyes closed and maybe like had twilight feeling for a little bit. But the cicadas and the frogs, like the noises were so loud. Like it was like, there's no way you're gonna sleep, right? It was just so loud. I figured I'm in the woods, it should be quiet. It was like so loud. And there'd be all this noise, and then out of nowhere would come this roaring, rolling thunder across the sky. Like, and it would just drown out all the other sounds. And I sort of was meditating. I was like, that's God. He's like saying, I'm here. You know, I'm in charge. This is the loudest voice. Right? And that was like a good start for me. I felt like good about that. And yeah, same experience as you guys. Like, you know, I was like, okay, well, got to get up at 3:30 and be ready at 4 just in case. And yeah, when they rolled up, I think we were all pretty much ready to go, even though 5 minutes goes by real fast. And Chad was counting down the seconds as we finally got in. I remember, I think it was like Tucker said, I was sitting in the car and I remember just observing Chad. I'm like, Chad and Cornbread aren't saying anything. Like, and we're all talking. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys just shut up, you know? Like, you're talking. They're not talking. You know, you guys are annoying right now, you know? Like this is one of those moments where you don't talk. Like, observe them, you know? And, you know, and I was listening to them. I was ready to barrel out of that van and single file up that trail as soon as, you know. And, yeah, I was ready, man. That first leg, like, I felt great. I was ready to roll. Like, I was like, we're rolling and we're going to crush this thing. And got in the front and, you know, people are saying, like, slow down. And I'm like, I'm going slow. You know, like, going slow? What do you mean slow down? Why does everybody want to go so slow? I got to be dead honest. You know, I was looking around and I was like, man, these people aren't really prepared for this thing. Like, what are we doing here? Like I want to break the record of distance.
Right.
I still, again, I had no idea what the goal was, you know. I didn't realize that we had no watches, no tracking devices. And then when we came into that first resupply and I saw how beat up some people were, I was like, oh my God, like, we're not going to make it. This is really bad.
Yeah.
And then it slowly, like, dawned on me, like, you know, if these guys don't make it, like, we don't make it. You know, there's no finish line here. Like, this is a team. And, man, that's a lot of what I learned when I was there. when, Blake did his little praying and his scripture reading and the spiel in that 30 minutes we had together, or silently, was like, this, some of you, he said, might make it through this thing, without breaking down. But eventually in your life, you're going to break down. And I started thinking about my alcoholism, started thinking about my divorce. I'm like, yeah, the world's going to break me down. Like I'm no better than any of these guys here. And the only reason why I'm here is because of God. God's strengthening me through the whole thing. And so it's slowly turned into something a little bit more honorable, I think. Like, I'm a pretty selfish person, man. And, I look around, I judge people constantly. And when I've heard the stories so far, I'm just blown away. I'm like, when I heard Ray's story, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What a miracle.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about it again on the way up here this morning. And I was just like you. And I talked about it in my recap, is it was all about me. It was all about, what have I done? I'm going to finish this. And, similar time frame where it clicked, and it was like, this ain't about me, and, just finding strength in our group as a whole, and trying not to judge people. And even afterwards, still a feeling of selfishness. And like I said before, it wasn't until that next day when it really, I think God really opened my eyes to see what actually happened for me. And so, just unbelievably powerful experience, through pain, through adversity, through watching other people's pain is where I found a lot of strength. Yeah. And it sounds like for you, it was a similar feeling.
Yeah, I feel like Chad's message about thriving on adversity was like a whole other level. It was like, it's not about just finishing. It's not about just persevering. It's about thriving, persevering and thriving under the adversity. And it's like, oh, that means that I get to the end in an honorable way, meaning that I helped others get there too, right? And, I looked out for everyone else, and, I smiled even when I didn't want to. I gave somebody a word of encouragement when I didn't want to. I was like, wow, that's big, like just thinking for future things like that. Like, yeah, I got to take it to that level, because I've in my life, it's like, okay, we're going, and I'm going to drag you with me. And I usually don't realize, so I turn around and everybody's like bloody behind me of how insane I've made things. I've driven people crazy. I've made it a roller coaster just to get to the end. And then they're like, what's the point? I'm like bored. I'm tired of this. I want it to be like a good thing at the end,
It's amazing, man. It's an amazing story that you have. It's an amazing journey that you've been through, that you've persevered through, and where you're at now. Is there a Bible verse? Is there a quote? Is there a motto that you maybe live by now, or maybe something that got you through at a younger age when times are tough, or when you start having those dark thoughts that you lean on?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love the Bible, and I like when Jesus heals the paralytic, that they like lower through the roof, which, by the way, he was carried there by his friends, and I realized that, like, he didn't get there to Jesus on his own, but when he does like seemingly absurd, the guy wants to be healed, and he says, I forgive your sins, son, I forgive your sins. They say, like, that's ridiculous. Who but God can do that? And he's like, just so you know that I have the power, to heal or to forgive sins. I'll heal this guy, and he tells him to get up and take his mat and walk home. And I feel like that's what God did for me. He took me off of just a garbage heap and said, stand up. You have value.
Yeah. It's amazing. If you could sit on a park bench and have a conversation with someone living or deceased, who would it be and why?
I don't know. I guess maybe my father. I wouldn't mind catching up with him. The last thing I said to him was, I'm having this trouble and this thing is aggravating me and I'm trying to figure this out. And he was trying to give me some advice and it wasn't really hitting. And he said, well, look, let me know how it works out for you. Like, I really want to know. And it involved my recovery. I was really questioning a lot of things. And then, that was the last time I talked to him. So I've always been saying, like, Dad, well, this is how it's going now. You know what I mean? And I realize that's probably really hard for a father to let go and realize he's got no control over whether I make it or not. And, maybe go fishing with him or something. But I don't know. It's a really, really profound question because everybody is, even remarkable people, just fail in comparison to God, right?
Yeah.
Like I think, it's crazy, but maybe you could sit next to Jesus on a park bench, I don't know if I could look him in the eye. I don't know if it would be worth asking him anything because he would already know. Maybe I would just say thanks.
Yeah. Be grateful.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Ben, what you got?
There's a lot. I don't know. When you first start out, the only thing I could think of is like high school students. Like, I just hope that high school students that listen to this, like, really understand, like, it's not just them that feel like they have to put on masks all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I go back to my high school days. Like, I wonder, I was probably the same way. Like, we all face insecurities. And if we're just open and vulnerable about it, like, it's a lot easier to get through when you have people with it,
Yeah.
And then, how long have you been sober for?
15 and a half years. Yeah. March
That's awesome,
23rd,
man.
2010 was the first day I was sober. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Do you have any advice for anyone out there who may be where you were 16 years ago?
Yeah, you don't have to dig any deeper. It's like everybody's got to hit bottom before they get sober. Nobody wants to cry out to God until they have to, I don't think. Nobody wants to do the work. Nobody wants to walk into an AA meeting, that's for sure. Like, you don't grow up thinking, I want to be an alcoholic one day. But you can do that whenever you want. Whenever, anytime suitable. Just do it. And, it's funny because my nephew, he's sober now. He had a problem with drugs. And he called me once. He's like, Uncle Al, I need like $1,000 to get into this treatment center, Like $1,000, it seems like a pretty flat, round number, and so I start peppering him with questions, and he gets aggravated, I'm just asking you for help. And I was like, look, man, like, why don't you walk your ass to an AA meeting? And I hung up on him. That was the hardest thing I ever done, my sister called me and she gave me all kinds of hell, like this kid might kill himself. And I was like, yeah, he might. But we all have a choice to make. It's like, do you wait until you have a physical trainer, or do you put your shoes on and just go outside, Just don't drink today and go to a meeting. And, it's, I know the program works. When people hear that it doesn't work, that really bothers me. It just means somebody didn't work the program. They weren't honest, they weren't open-minded, and they weren't willing to do what's required. But that program works. And it's written, I think it's written in a way that drunks and normal people can understand it. It's really the gospel. It's a 12-step program that gets you to a relationship with God. Period, that's it. That's what it says in the big book. The sole purpose of it is so you can have a relationship with your higher power that can solve all your problems. And I didn't come with an educational, like a religious education or anything. I had no idea what I was doing there or what it was actually going to do for me. I thought I was just going to get sober and then be miserable. And I got everything just like my father promised that one day,
It's pretty awesome.
And sitting here and like knowing like how you had anxiety and you're scared all the time, like walking in, like you have confidence, man. And I don't know if it's confidence or if it's peace, like it just seems like you have like a lot of peace in your life. And isn't that what we all want, Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times people blame God and, when in my relationship with God, I feel like that he wants us to, you know what I mean? Like you feel something like he knows it anyway. You know what I mean? Like, have a conversation, like, God's real. Like, I don't know. That's how I feel with it. But no matter where you're at, like, I feel like God, yes, you go through hard times. Like, that's life. Like, it's not supposed to be perfect down here. Like, go back to Genesis and read that, you know? Like, he makes it hard for all of us. But, like, I feel like when you actually cry out to God, that's when you find God, right? Yeah. Like, how many times, like, you kept going low and, you know, another rung on the ladder lower, another rung on the ladder lower. Then you, like, cry out to God and, you know, you go to AA and you find him and, you know, would you have found God if you never got to that last rung, you know?
I don't know.
And I feel like sometimes we have to go through the really hard things in order to get to that spot where we are at that point where what else can we do but cry out to God? And that's the part where no matter where you're at, he'll find you, right? And everybody that's a believer knows that whatever I've done, whatever Dan's done, whatever you've done, it's all equal and, you know, it's all sin, all no matter what, Jesus forgives us and he'll meet you right where you're at.
Exactly.
Have you ever heard Ed Milet sing about, do you know who Ed Milet is?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Where his dad was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And I told this to Kevin when we did his podcast. You know, Ed's got a very profound saying. He says, you're most qualified in life to help the person that you used to be. Mm. And he learned that from his dad because it clicked one night when he was laying in bed after his dad had passed away that someone helped his dad, who was an alcoholic at one point in time. Someone helped your dad.
Yeah.
That was an alcoholic. Your dad helped many people, right? Mm-hmm. You've helped how many people in the past 15 years?
A lot. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, how amazing is that?
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, when I heard that, I was like, wow, you know, whether that's alcoholism, whether that's, you know, whatever it is, you know, whatever you've overcame, that makes you more qualified than someone else who hasn't to help someone. Yeah. And so, man, your story, thank you for coming all the way up from Miami to share it.
Yeah.
There's so many people who are going to be impacted in a positive way by what you've shared. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being open and honest. And it is powerful.
It's funny when people say, oh, it's my story. It's my truth. Like, it's God's story. Mm-hmm. God's the only truth there is. You know what I mean? Like, there's only one story, and it's God's. You know what I mean? And it's like great to finally be humbled and realize that I'm just a small cog in the wheel of his story, man. And if I can help anybody, it's like, it's not my doing.
Yeah.
You know, he paid a price so I could be useful again. And, you know, it's just to his glory.
It's awesome. All right, everybody. I don't know how you can't share this one. We continue to say thank you for all the support, all the shares, all the likes, all those fun things. Share this one. Go out and be tempered.
Hi, my name is Allie Schmidt. This is my dad, Dan. He owns Caitlin's Glass.
Thanks, Allie. Things like doors and windows go into making a house. But when it's your home, you expect more, like the great service and selection you'll get from Caitlin's Glass. Vinyl replacement windows from Caitlin's come with a lifetime warranty, including accidental glass breakage replacement. Also ask for custom shower doors and many other products and services. Call 962-1636. Locally owned with local employees for nearly 30 years.
Caitlin's Glass, the clear choice.
Hey, do you want to catch every episode live as it's being recorded? Log on to patreon.com/BeTempered for exclusive footage behind the scenes, photos, and a live recording as it takes place. Go to patreon.com/BeTempered.